Can you remember a time when you felt left out of a group? Maybe your friends got together and you weren't invited, but then you saw them post a photo on socials. Or you weren't chosen for a sporting team or a project at work, even though you know you would have been brilliant. It stung, didn't it? As simplistic as it is, inclusivity in weddings can be as easy as giving everyone the opportunity to feel seen, valued, and welcome. That's why when renegade celebrant Ashlee Bunney, yes, I believe that is her real name, contacted me about disrupting the default in the wedding industry. As engaged couples, supporters, and even vendors, I was eager to share her message with you. I know you're kind, but also that you're short on time. You'd love to be an ally, but also don't want to have to take a short course on it, right? So this is the podcast episode equivalent of inclusivity for dummies, but with no judgment because it's totally fine if you've never heard about this before. It's a conversation and a way of thinking that helps you, me, and everyone become a little bit more open and accepting. And fuck knows we need more of that in the world at the moment. So without banging on for too long with an intro, I'll let Ashlee do most of the talking. Let's get stuck into it. Unbridely is a community of pro-wedding vendors who believe in freedom and integrity in weddings, giving you options, solutions, tips and tricks to create the experience and memories that you and your fiancé really want and deserve. Because we believe that weddings are a team sport. With how-tos, stories and interviews with recently married couples, we find out what went right and what they'd change if they could go back and do it all over again. I'm Camille and welcome to the Unbridely podcast. Hey Ashlee, it's so good to chat with you.
Thank you so much, Camille. Thank you for having me on.
Because you're on the other side of Australia, so for our US, UK, Canada, New Zealand listeners, you're over in Western Australia.
On the dark side, yes.
Please share, we'll get down to why you're here in a sec, but a bit about where you've come from and what you do.
So I have just celebrated my 12-month anniversary of becoming a celebrant, an MC, and it has just been the best year ever. It's been such a ride. As I'm sure you know, becoming a celebrant it's unlike anything really. And when you become one, you're not only learning how to be a celebrant and run weddings and create marriages, but you're also automatically having to be a business owner and a sole trader.
Yeah. Surprise.
Yeah. And so you're sort of learning all of that at once. Yeah, it's been a lot, but it's been amazing. And I'm just so excited to see what the future holds for me and my brand.
But, you're just not a regular celebrant, Ashlee, are you?
I'm not a regular celebrant. I'm a cool celebrant.
Oh, you're one of the cool ones. Oh, good. No, but you're not tiptoeing around tradition and, I was going to say culture. That's not right. But around the way things have been done in the past.
Yeah, I have come into it being a bit polarizing, I guess we could say. But I like that. I think that's good. I think me and my style, people know within 5 seconds of landing on my Instagram or my website if I'm possibly going to be for them or not. And I think in our industry, I think it is really important to stand out and to work out what your unique selling point is and your special sauce, and then just hammer it.
Yeah.
So that people can make an informed decision about, the celebrant that they want. Because we are quite an integral part of a wedding,
Pretty important, mate. Yeah. Would it be fair to say one of your biggest bugbears in weddings and in the, community that you've sort of stepped into in the last 12 months is the heteronormative structure, language, expectations around weddings? Is that fair?
Yeah, it is something that it's not really something I noticed or thought about until I stepped into the industry myself. And it's when you are setting up your processes and your documentation and your workflows and all of that for our job, it made me realize just how gendered the language is. And so right from the point of conception of my business, I made it a point to be as inclusive and as broad and as general as possible. Yeah, far gone are the days where a wedding is definitely going to be between a bride and a groom, a man and a woman, because as we know, 7 years ago, marriage equality was legalised. So now anyone can get married.
Here in Australia, yeah.
But, those heteronormative assumptions do still remain. And it's something that I had noticed in the last few months, mainly from engaged couples seeking information in Facebook wedding groups and stuff, addressing their posted as, hey brides or hey ladies. And yeah, it's just something I started questioning about whether or not they actually had to address their particular question to only that subset of people.
There's been a really long history, obviously, of, well, maybe not in Facebook groups, maybe, but obviously, recognised marriages were only between a man and a woman. And yeah, the evolution of marriage equality, thank fuck, around the world has seen, like all of us, being challenged by, right, this isn't the way it has to be, is going to be in the future. And not everyone we talk to is like, yeah, hey bride, hey girl. And it really, it's funny. If you only reduce weddings to that very slender audience of, as you said, heteronormative, couples, I don't think the wedding industry is as rich as it could be. Do you know what I mean? I feel like it really does restrict us in a way. So why do you think it's important to evolve not only our conversation, but, the listener of this podcast as well? Why do you think it's important to move away from what we've seen and heard in the past with weddings?
Because it is in the past. I mean, before marriage equality came out, on the legal paperwork, there was only bride and groom to choose from as to how you identify. But now it includes partner, which is great, and that just broadens it out to everyone. But I feel like we still kind of haven't evolved some of our language and just the assumptions around it. And when I sort of took these calls on, I wasn't trying to call anyone out. It is very natural, and especially like I'm a cis straight woman, so I guess, and maybe in a way that it was easy for me to recognize it. But at the same time, I don't blame anyone who is still just automatically addressing everything at a bride or a lady.
Could you explain for my listener who might not be aware, what is a cis straight us?
Cis is assigned gender at birth. So that's sort of the gender that you were born with, your genitalia. But obviously, as we know now, gender is a bit of a social, well, that's your sex. Your gender is a more social construct, and people are now becoming more and more comfortable to question, if that's how they identify or not. And there are many different ways, physically, emotionally, mentally, figuratively, that they can now identify and, lean into who they truly feel that they are on the inside. So being a cis woman, I was assigned the female sex at birth, and I still identify as a woman.
I think it's really important to say that out loud. Thank you. And the other thing that you mentioned was when you stepped into the fray, perhaps you could tell the listener, because I know that this moment of you championing the cause came at a pivotal sort of something that you did. What did you do, Ashlee?
Yeah, so when I posted in one of the wedding Facebook groups in Perth, and I had created, in conjunction with a couple of queer vendors over here, I had run it past them because when I first started noticing it, I did want to say something about it, but I don't know, I felt a bit funny as a cis straight woman kind of becoming this ambassador for this, gender thing. And they said, no, you're actually the perfect person to take this on, because statistically, it is going to be mainly cis straight women that you're talking to in these groups, because just statistically, they're the biggest number of people. Plus, they are still the majority of wedding planners that take on the bulk of wedding planning are going to be a woman. So I created this post, and I guess the way that I worded it and posted it was in my classic on-brand Ashlee Bunney, polarizing, perhaps jarring,
straight to the point, sweary. Yeah. Give us all the adjectives, mate.
I had said when I see posts directed, at brides or ladies, it makes me want to slap my flaps with a fork. And how did I come up with that? Look, I couldn't tell you. It just rolled off the tongue.
Slap my flaps is, it's the rhyming, I think, that gets us all.
Oh, it's very intelligent, like Shakespeare hard out.
Yeah, Shakespearean-esque, yes.
And because I know when you want to get your message across in this very saturated, busy time of social media, you do have to stand out. And often how I stand out is capturing attention by being a bit crude.
Yeah.
So that's what I did. And the post got reported and removed by members. So then I didn't realize that. So then I reposted it and softened some of the language a bit, like just edited the words because I thought the group didn't like.
Because you figure the message is
flaps.
important, but maybe the way I said it was a bit confronting.
Well, yeah, I just edited it so that maybe like the meta, I don't know, bots didn't take it down again. Yeah. But then it got removed and reported again. And then I copped a 24-hour temporary ban. And it was suggested that, you know, I don't know, maybe the way that I posted my message wasn't great, or maybe it wasn't the right forum for it, but, you know, feel free to take it to my own platforms. So that's what I did. And again, still leaned on the slapping my flaps with a fork thing. And anyway, did I want to start a conversation? Yes. Did I intend for it to be picked up by Perth Now and be on podcasts about it? I mean, not specifically, but I'm not mad.
Yeah, exactly. It gets the message across, right? So what is, you know, in an ideal world, Ashlee, what is the message that you want to get across?
In my post, I said, all I want to do is bring consciousness to disrupt the default. For me, it's the default terminology, bride, ladies. Again, I don't blame anyone. We are still a bit indoctrinated and ingrained in these structures. It was only 7 years ago, and 7 years isn't a very long time, but we do need to start getting snapped, slapped, whatever, out of the default. So all I wanted to do was that the next time someone goes to write a post, or if it was a vendor seeing it, maybe they have it in their messaging or in their forms or processes, whatever, just stop and think. Is it only that subset of people that you want to direct this to? Because it's not just then about like gender and like non-binary and queer space. It's also then discounting our cis straight men that are in these groups. And yes, as we said, statistically, it will be in a heterosexual relationship, the woman bearing the load.
But not always.
Not always, no. And I don't want to keep perpetuating that notion. Yeah, so it's almost then it's that internalized misogyny piece as well. Again, don't blame anyone, but I just wanted to shed some light on it. And the next time they go to post about it, think, is there a good reason why it only needs to be addressed to brides or ladies, or can it be everyone?
Mm.
Because you don't want to automatically discount or make other people feel disregarded about when you're asking for DJ recommendations or something. Yeah, so that's all it was, just to disrupt the default. And if people didn't agree with that, it didn't align with their values, or they didn't see why it was important, that's fine. Like, you do you. I'm not going to judge anyone.
Mm.
But I know for a fact there were people that saw that and were like, oh, hang on, yeah, right. I get it. You've just made me stop and think about, yeah, okay. And that's all I wanted to do.
Yeah. What you've just said there, Ashlee, reminds me a lot of some of the discussion that's happening over in the United States at the moment about the conservative versus Democrats, and just the idea that left-leaning woke people are trying to ram something down people's throats. I think that there's a middle ground there, that it can be educational, opening a conversation, giving potential to look at things a little bit differently, because the world has changed. It is evolving. And, you know, as evidenced by Australia taking on marriage equality, it is changing before our very eyes, and our language, and you're right, the default needs to catch up. It's not about making anyone feel bad. And in fact, it's more about having everyone feel comfortable and welcomed. And so I really like the way you worded that. That's brilliant. Things that bore me as a grown-up: dusting, finding the best energy company deal for our family's needs, and getting stuck in traffic. And you know what else is right up there? Changing my name after I got married. In fact, just the thought of the process and how many different companies I'd need to contact to make it happen makes me feel, at best, overwhelmed, and at worst, like I really should get stuck into the dusting. It's estimated that newlyweds spend up to 8 hours of their precious time working through the name change process with an average of 27 places that they need to contact. This is where Easy Name Change comes in. They've been around for 15 years, continually developing and improving the most comprehensive name change services, not just in Australia, but worldwide. And their kits provide you with a sort of shopping list of companies where you simply pick which ones you need to notify. They send you a list with detailed instructions for each of your companies, saving you hours of calling around, waiting on hold, sending emails, and then waiting for a response. Easy name change kits also provide ready-to-send forms, letters and emails, so you just attach your marriage certificate and you're done. Starting at $35, the value and time you get back is a no-brainer. For more help on changing your name after you get married, there is an excellent blog post on the Unbridely website, and I'll put a link in the show notes for you. And Unbridely podcast listeners get a $5 discount on their name change kits by using the code Unbridely5, that's UNBRIDELY5, the number 5, which is valid until the end of 2024. So don't be like me. Get your easy name change kit so you can move on to the fun parts of being grown-ups together. What about these engaged couples, Ashlee, who are wanting to be more inclusive? They might have some, people in their wedding party. They might have guests that don't identify as, cis. They want to make sure that everyone feels as loved and accepted as the next person. How can these engaged couples take some of these concepts and weave them through their wedding?
Well, yeah, I think if they have anyone that's going to be at their wedding, in their wedding party or their guests, hopefully they would know if people did identify as what maybe they don't look like to the naked eye. But even then, you still can't assume, can you? But yes, just say the wedding party. You'd like to think that they were close enough that they would know. So ask people, do you want me to call you my bridesmaid, my maid of honor, best man, groomsman? If not, there are other ways to call them. I mean, I always just say wedding party, because even bridal party, I mean, that's the bride, that's that more feminine leaning. So I stay away from that. We've seen best men, standing up with our ladies, loose unit, whatever they want to identify as. I think it's just asking.
Yeah, come on, hit me with some, what have you used in the past?
Well, instead of automatically saying a maid of honor, it could be like a main of honor. And then that's like your main person.
Ride or die. Yeah.
It's just not making the assumption. It's asking what they would like to be called, I think, is what it is. As far as like everyone else at their wedding, I would like to think that they would make sure that, if they're not sure how to say their celebrant or MC or DJ is going to address the crowd at large, I would like to think people are staying away from like ladies and gentlemen. Which again, it's very ingrained. It's very cliched and stereotypical, but like I have never and will never say that. My go-to is family and friends. If there's something a bit more personal to the couple or something that I've picked up about our journey together, I'll refer to them as something else a bit different. Party people, whatever it is. But yeah, have that conversation with your vendors if you're not sure if they are really conscious about that gendered language piece.
There's lots of different ways though, Ashlee, right? I mean, there is the group. It's everyone.
Yeah.
There are, party people. There are family and friends. There's many like gender neutral terms for addressing the room. But yeah, bringing it to your vendor's attention, that's an excellent way to make sure that it comes from the top.
Yeah, and don't be afraid to do that, because, I mean, I'd like to think that the vendors that you are choosing do align with you. I mean, as we know, that's what we preach all the time to our couples. Like, you've got to vibe with your vendors on a really personal level, especially the ones that are going to be there on the day. So your celebrant, MC, DJ, planner, they are the ones that are going to really help to elevate your whole day and your whole experience. So you want to make sure that you feel really comfortable with how they are going to speak to everyone, address everyone, not make assumptions. But yeah, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to call it out. Even like your venue. I did hear not long ago that a venue here in Perth for 2 women getting married, on their personalised timeline that they sent through to them, it still had bride and groom on it.
Oh.
So that's glaring, and I would like to think that is not a norm, and I'd like to think that this couple did point that out in a, don't have to be aggressive about it, but just like, hey, like, that's quite a glaring one.
Yeah.
Even if they're the signs or the names that they have on the bathrooms, like if they're very gendered,
yes,
maybe you could sort of say, hey, maybe, I'm not asking you to change the decor of your whole thing, but maybe there's maybe a little sign that the couple might want to bring that, I don't know, makes it a bit more. I mean, you still would want to differentiate between which way each bathroom's leaning, unless you wanted to have just a complete all in, everyone in the same bathroom, like Ally McBeal or something.
Sure.
That's fine.
But if there's an accessible toilet, for example, that could be relabeled, then a couple could, look after that, couldn't they?
Yeah. I just think it's just not being afraid to talk to your vendors and to point the stuff out, because it does just take someone pointing someone out or starting the conversation or asking the question. And they're like, oh, yeah, hang on. It's something I never would have thought about because it's been there for 10 years.
Yeah.
But of course, I want to be moving with the times and be more inclusive. And then that little question that you ask them could be the whole thing that really changes everything.
I love this, Ashlee. Like, just having a fucking conversation is just, I don't know, it's just so human. It's really good. What about, I hadn't really thought about this before, but you know how traditionally on an old school wedding invitation, you would address it to Mr. and Mrs. Smith. What about stuff like that? Because you could go really deep into this, couldn't you?
Well, you could, and it's completely up to each individual and each individual couple about like how inclusive and how broad they want to be. I mean, with like names and the Mr. and Mrs. stuff, like just how about you just call them their first names? If you're not sure, like just keep it simple. Even, like when I'm talking to my couples about their ceremony, I ask them, I say, how do you want to be pronounced at the end? Do you want to be Mr. and Mrs. or Mr., Mrs., or do you want to just be your first names because you're still just human beings that you're married, but that doesn't necessarily for you, that might not mean that you're anything different other than you're just your name.
Yeah.
I also ask, and regardless of gender, if either of them are planning to change their name, because that's the other thing, Mr. and Mrs. blah, blah, the automatic assumption is that say if it's a man and a woman, the woman's going to take the man's name, which is a very patriarchal structure. And sure, a lot of people still really align with that and love that, and that's fantastic. But I just try not to assume anything. Like the questionnaires I send my couples, they look ridiculous sometimes at a glance because there's so much. But I've just learned as I've gone on in the last 12 months, this is the granular detail that I want to get into because I do not want to assume anything.
Yeah. And to that point then, Ashlee, how can other wedding vendors who are like listening to you and going, yeah, actually, I want to be more aware. I don't want to assume either. How can they start to implement some of these thought processes? And, it's almost like, it's a little filter, isn't it, that you're putting everything through to go, wait a minute, am I doing this or saying this or have this written in a form because this is how it's always been done? Or is there a more respectful way to, speak and communicate with my couples? Like, what can other vendors do?
Yeah, and it will take a bit of time and work to audit your whole business, all your processes. So all of your copy and messaging and everything all over your social media, like your website, your inquiry form, your emails, your email templates, probably every touch point in your business probably is going to have to be looked at. And it might seem overwhelming, but just start at, like, say, the very start. Where's the first place a couple's going to go looking? Because you want to be as inclusive and showing your best from the very first. So I would start where they're going to go first. If it's Instagram, start there. If it's your website, you really just have to go through with a fine tooth comb and go through like every question, every form, everything. And you might not get it all in one hit, but just as you go through, you're going to notice other things like, oh, hang on. But again, it just comes back to not assuming and disrupting that default. Ask the question, just ask, because you don't know if you don't ask.
Absolutely. How would you like to be addressed? What are your pronouns? Yeah. All the simplest things. Do you have any other advice for couples getting married, Ashlee, around this topic to help them?
I mean, definitely the Facebook groups is probably a good one to start, because that is probably where a lot of people are addressing things at a big subset of people. But even if you're posting, say, on your stories asking for advice from friends and family that have been married before, it's just stopping and thinking, like, if you're addressing it to people in particular, just stop and think about it in general. And as I said, you should be making sure that your vendors are aligned with you in every way. And yeah, just doing your research about who is being actively inclusive is fabulous, if that is something that, aligns with you.
Exactly. If it's important to you.
It's just starting conversations and having these conversations as well.
Yeah.
As you move through the journey and afterwards. It's just the more people that are talking about it, that, the more it's going to stop just being this automatic heteronormative assumption.
Agreed. Because there's nothing wrong if I identify as a bride, as a female, to go, hey, I'm a bride, to wear my bride sash and, all the bridey things, if that's what I choose. But it's the discounting of everyone else around you that's the issue, right?
Yeah. Because after my post got taken down in that group, then someone else, a photographer here, posted sort of a similar message, but maybe not as polarizing and jarring. She didn't mention flaps anyway.
Okay. Let's put
and
it
she
that
just
way.
sort of posted a similar kind of message, and there were people that were commenting saying, like, are you saying that we're not allowed to call ourselves brides? But I want to be a bride. And it's like, of course, like, if that's how you identify, like, this is not taking anything away from anyone. All we want to do is add other people to broaden it out. You can identify and you can call yourself whatever you like. And if you know for a fact that other people identify as that way, you can call them that. But if you're addressing it at a broader subset of people, just have a stop and think about maybe not everyone does. That's all it is. Not taking away anything from anyone.
Oh my gosh, I love this, Ashlee. Okay, so if someone's sitting there going, my God, I love her and I might be getting married in Perth, then how can a couple find you?
Probably Instagram is the best place to start. So that's Ashlee Bunney _Celebrant. And yes, just I'm sure Camille will pop my link in the show notes, because my whole life I've had to spell both of my names, Ashlee and Bunney. So that's the first place to start. And as I said, you'll probably know within 5 seconds of landing on my page if me and my style is going to be for you.
They know, Ashlee. They know already. I love this conversation. I love the fact that you opened it up and, that it is just as important for couples to get their heads around it if it's something important to them. And even if it's not something important to them, it's just good to be aware of. And especially for vendors, I know generally in Australia, we have, I think, very progressive wedding vendors, and I'm really proud actually. But, if you're anywhere else in the world, I would love to hear from you. How do you feel about getting rid of some of the assumptions and, traditional gendered roles, titles, all of the things in weddings? I'd love to know how you're going in whatever country you're in as well. And we'll see if we can't just open some minds a little bit, Ashlee.
Most vendors that I say are doing the right thing. There would be a few that are still, leaning into those more heteronormative, maybe old school traditional terminology. But I'd like to think if they are, it's not a malicious thing. It's just maybe they just haven't really thought about it, or they just don't see the value, or I don't know, maybe they just don't really have the time to go back through. But I think it is really important. And I think, like, from a, moral and just human standpoint, but also from a business standpoint, couples are becoming more and more careful with who they're choosing, especially in this day and age of social media and how we are all now able to showcase ourselves and what we stand for and what makes us different. We can do it so easily. So couples are being, I can't even think of the word now, but they're being just very choosy.
Discerning.
So I think if you want to be seen as an inclusive, modern, cool vendor,
With a K,
get on board.
Open your mind a bit. Thank you so much, Ashlee. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Camille. Bye.
That about wraps it up for this episode of the Unbridely podcast. For the links and resources we mentioned, please head to the show notes. And if you love the show, please review and subscribe on the podcast platform you're on now so you don't miss out on a single episode. Thanks so much for listening. And remember, weddings are a team sport. Catch you soon.